Okay. We should now be live, Håkon. Welcome to this live stream. Today we will do something a little bit different. We will take a look at the new service from Google called Recommendations AI. We did a simple integration with Crystallize and a headless front end. And we were thinking to walk through that and come with some comments and lessons learned from this simple integration with Recommendations AI. I got Håkon with me because we will dive into some code, and it's better to do that with Håkon in place. So I'm thinking we could just start with, so Recommendations AI is part of the Google Cloud service. This is what Google is also using to power, the recommendations on YouTube, actually. So it is a recommendation engine that has seen its share of traffic. And it's now in GA, which is general availability. It was in beta, I think, when we actually did this implementation. There were still some rough edges during the setup that I guess we will get back to. But just brief, and I'll use the Google website, just a brief information on kind of how it works, because it's 3 main steps. And the first, and we will show this, how to ingest the data, because in order to do recommendations, you need to have your product catalog. So we did, and when I say we, it is Håkon, did an integration with Crystallize, and we'll show that, so that we have the products available in the recommendation engine. In addition, you have the customer data. So this is the tracking that we do on the website, and there are 4 tracking types that is required. It's the view product page, it's the view front page, add to basket, and complete purchase. And based on this, you can train your AI and customize the type of recommendations you want, and then you can display the recommendations or the results. So we'll basically walk through all of those steps, and I'll start by, that was Slack. I will mute Slack. I'll start by going into the Google Cloud dashboard, and the service is called Recommendations AI. So right now, I'm actually on the free tier on the Google Cloud service here. And the first part that we need to look at is the import of the data, because you need to have your product available here.
Yeah, I guess, Bård, you could mention that whenever you sign up for the service like the Recommendations AI, I think are you prompted to create a project, or is that done for you out of the box?
I at least created a project. I don't remember if it was prompted. Yeah. I think it was a pretty smooth sign-up process. Okay. And the first thing, I didn't even type in a name for the project. My first project is what I created here. And this is actually using the furniture demo tenant that we have with Crystallize. So it's we imported a product catalog here, and it's 100-ish products here. And basically, the end result that we have here is that I'm now looking at this beautiful sofa, and if I'm scrolling down, you will see that in this case, it's others viewed these products also. So it's a recommendation based on, actually it is this recommendation, which is active now, is the products I looked at last, but we'll get back to that. It is fetching these recommendations dynamically and personally from the Google Recommendations AI. So this is the first part, and basically you need to import. And what we did here is basically created a, can we call it a JSON file? Maybe you want to comment on that.
Yeah, there's definitely JSON within the file. Yes.
Yeah. it was a bit funky because it was both new lines and double end curly brackets were required for the import to be successful. So that was interesting. And I can also mention briefly, when you are creating the credentials or the tokens, you need to check off here to get access to the predict method. And in addition, since they seem to have merged the recommendations AI with the retail API, you have to give permission to both. So there seems that there is a migration internally, at least it was at Google. So you need to give permission on when you create the tokens. And maybe I can quickly show here. I can just delete those tokens afterwards. Yeah, that was a good example.
But I guess, Bård, that what we're showing right now, these screens that we're seeing and the buttons that you click, all that might just change overnight. Who knows? Because it's very early stage of the product.
Yeah, even down to the, actually when we did the first product import, it didn't list the products here. So it said 0 products, even though we had 100 or so products imported into the recommendation engine. So this is the first step. Set up the credentials, and you need this to be able to import and get the right access. And when you need to configure the credentials again, give both access to the retail API and the recommendations API, and you need to tick the checkbox here to be able to access the predict method, which is the predict is what you use in order to generate placements or recommendations that you display on your web page. So that part, and we'll get back to Håkon actually showing the script and where we injected this in the Next.js, the boilerplate, was it?
Yeah, true. Yeah, you want me to share?
Yeah, maybe we can jump directly into that. What I'll do is I'll just then.
Because I guess at this stage, Bård, that you've got your project, you got your credentials. The next step would be to import the data, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And if you share your screen, and we can take a look at the code there. And again, this code is available on GitHub. We'll post a link if we haven't already.
Yeah, so I decided to use our Next.js boilerplate for this simply because it's the one we typically use. You could argue that stuff like this, that can import to a backend system like this, could go in a more backend only project, like the service API, for instance. But in terms of just getting all you need in one place, you just put it here. So if you check out the Next.js boilerplate and you select the with Google recommendations branch, you will see that there are some things added. And for the import, we have a Google data export folder here, which is meant to run on the server. And the whole purpose of this is to generate this. Like I've got one example here, one export that you can just simply upload to Google. And this is how it looks. And when Bård mentioned it's a JSON file, it's kind of true, except the format is a bit weird. There's one product per line. This is important. You cannot have line breaks without it meaning a new product. So a line break means a new product. And it needs to have certain keys. And wait, if I scroll a bit back, then it cannot be like stuff like comma or any other character after you end the curly braces here. So each line.
What we spent, sorry to interrupt you, but what we spent most time with was debugging this format. And it is actually correctly documented, but we didn't believe the documentation. It says that 3 lines separates each line, and that we have full and curly brackets. That's the first time I've ever seen that format.
Yeah, me too. So what we wanted from the Google documentation, if any of them are watching this stream, is like a quick example. Download an example of how an import should look like, which would help us significantly. But we made it. So for those of you watching the stream, we'll just keep this there as a reference for how the import format was. And this is April 2021. Probably changed. We don't know. But yeah, it does require some keys. So I want to quickly show you how you can extract product products from Crystallize and compose this format. It's basically just going to use the code and the index.js file here. You can just use this as reference. And in all essence, what you want to do, you want to get all products from Crystallize and then build a format that just stringifies each product and joins them with a line break. That produces this exact format in the end. And just kind of sort of, we're using the search API to fetch the first 100 products. I don't want to spend time in the, reading the GraphQL query here. But the gist is essentially getting from search, we're enriching it even more with from catalog because we wanted even more information. And then at the end, we're returning a format that Google recommendations are requiring. I think all of these fields are required. I don't remember if any of them are optional, or if there might be more fields.
There were a couple that were optional actually, and I think we even skipped a few. But mostly what you have there is what you want by default. For example, I think the images were optional, among other things. But this is a good, I think. And I even think you added different image sizes also, didn't you?
Yeah. Yep. I did actually. I took the first image from the product, and we got I see that already now this code is legacy because we introduced AVIF support. So I kind of have to add that too. But just to have the JPEGs in here, or PNGs, or the non-fancy ones. We just filtered out those. But I guess the most important part here is that we got the SKU for the product here. This is our main identifier for the products in Google. And it's very good to use SKU because it's unique for your tenant. Each product variant has a unique SKU, so you can be sure that it's going to be unique for the tenant. This here is your project ID or project number, which is currently just hard-coded to this.
And I think we needed that to match for it to import. If I don't remember. So we did quite some some testing to get this working. But in the end, it's pretty straightforward if you just follow exactly the way that format should be, which ideally should have been a valid JSON in our opinion, I think. But okay, so this script, which is part of the boilerplate, it basically generates a text file. And they do have an API, but maybe I can show how, if I take over now, I'll just close this video from you. So I got this screen sharing here on my second monitor, boom. And I'll just share this guy again. So, okay, Håkon, and this is the process that we followed, is that Håkon created the script, and then we went to the UI here to upload. And it's basically import type, it's product catalog. You can also import user events so that you could actually retrospectively add information about which user visited what. I think this is especially for purchases. Is useful to what people have bought together, etc. But anyhow, I'll just browse here, and I have a bucket, furniture products.
Okay. So this is how you upload the file. It needs to be in the Google Cloud storage already.
Yeah. So I did that, and so there's So right now I'm just using one of the imports that we previously used, and this is basically kicking off an import job, and the products are already now existing. So they will basically just update them, and you could view the import activity, etc. To see, okay, here it's 82 products that's imported here. And what we see also here then is in the catalog is that you see the actual products. We actually did an error first because we used not the SKU but the object ID. So some of our first products in this case actually uses the IDs for the products in Crystallize. We decided to switch to SKUs to make it much easier to do full round-trip tracking of it. But this is, kitchenware, ceramic jugs, etc. This is the ficus plant, 99 euros, etc. So the data was imported like this, and that's what you need to do in order to get your catalog from Crystallize into the Google Recommendations AI, which is a mouthful, I know. And that enables us to start tracking user events. So, and I think that's the next thing we can look at, because there's 4 events we track. It's the front page. So / it's the product view. So if you click on the product, and we're also tracking add to basket. And also, finally, we are tracking the purchase, right? That's a separate event. And let me just do that. It doesn't really make any sense, but it's simple enough. And it is running on the Stripe test credential, so it's 42 all the way. That is the input there. And basically now I went to the front page, the product page, I added to the basket, and now I am just waiting for feedback from Stripe if our test card is confirmed. And then we have added a tracking now for the actual event of completing an order. And this is the second part, which you also get information about here on the events, where you will be able to monitor, user events, and you can go into the details of this, and you see it's got the different add to cart, detail, page view, homepage view, purchase. Right now, we haven't properly trained this because it's just a test data, but it's gotten 244 events. And I guess I will then just stop sharing and hand it over to you, Håkon.
Yeah, because you see the events here, let's just quickly show how we track them, because it's not really rocket science stuff. So this is the product page. And there's a use effect here after the page is loaded that just logs the type. These are strings that you need to be careful about writing correctly, but you can find them in the Google Recommendations documentation. So this is the detail page view for products, and we pass in the ID, which in our case we use the SKU, like we mentioned previously. The buy action looks like this. It's an add to cart. In that case, you need a cart ID, so we don't really have a cart ID. So we just, for now, just use the visitor ID. But if you have a cart ID, you would pass that in. Again, we're specifying SKU for product, and it's 1 for quantity. If we go to the tracker itself, if I can navigate to that, should be lib here. This is the actual tracker itself. There's some boilerplate code here. But essentially what it's doing is it's injecting a script from Google. It's called retail in this case. This might change. We're not sure. At the moment,
it's a little bit confusing because again, it seems like they're merging everything around the recommendations into the retail API. And there were some different API endpoints that we had, some with beta in the URL, etc., etc. So it's
So
early days, it's interesting.
So for all of this, look at the documentation that they have instead of our example, because it might not work in a few months. But we're setting up the project. We're telling it, you need to pass in an API key that Google gives you, as well as the project ID, which is different than project number, just saying that. And there's a location ID and a catalog ID. And these ones you get from the project, essentially. And then the actual tracking of events, it's quite easy. It's actually, this is the thing that you do. You pass in the visitor ID for all of them, and then, because that's the whole point of this, is to give you recommendations based on you as a user. Logged in or not logged in, doesn't matter. You as a session user. So that's how you track. So I'm not going to show all the different trackings because it looks
but also they do provide, there's two IDs if I don't remember wrong. So there's a visit ID and there's an optional user ID, so that they could link, let's say, anonymous sessions. After then, if you log in, then you would provide a user ID with the same visitor ID, and then they would kind of add those events to your user after the fact. So that's, I guess, why they're providing those or tracking both of those.
That might be true. Yeah. Right. Cool. So I guess you can then show the following part. Once we get the the products are in there, we're starting to tracking events. We're training the model. I guess the next step would then to be, what can a model produce?
Yeah, because training the model is basically you need to get traffic on your site, and right now we are in we just set up this on a recommend.superfast shop, so it's a site that is live, but it's not getting any traffic. So of course, in order to properly train and get proper recommendations, you need to have quite some traffic, and that is what you would configure under models. There is a default model that is configured, which is called recently viewed, which is, let's be fair, it's not any recommendations or any AI behind that, because it's basically history of the products that you have previously visited. So it's kind of a debug thing, or it's useful to show, I guess.
It is. The interesting part here is not really that it's not showing your history. It's showing the entire visitor's history. So it might show you products that other people have recently viewed, not just you.
And I just clicked here, create new model, and then you get information about model training, estimated to take 2 to 5 days. In our case, if we keep the traffic up on this demo site, it will take a little bit longer because you need at least 10,000 DCL page views. We have 179. Yeah, so it's but it gives you the information about how much data you need in order to configure a model. But anyhow, you will be able to create a model here, and you can choose between other products you may like, and this is based on predictions where you have other users added this to the cart item, etc., and looked at this. So this is giving you recommended products. You have the frequently bought together, which is exactly that. If you have an an iPhone, frequently bought together would be an extra charging cable and a casing, something like this. And then it's recommended for you, which is the next product we are most likely to be interacting with. And I guess, of course, here you need again quite some traffic, and you can see that the different models require different amounts of data. So if you have 1,000 purchases, you will be able to recommend on frequently bought together. Right now, I've tracked 1 here. You can also tune these models a little bit more, so you can, based on click-through rates. So this is when you have a recommendation that pops up. For example, you might also be interested in this product, and you click on it. That's the click-through. And conversion rate is the products you clicked on that actually ends up in the basket and ends up being purchased. So this is how you will be able to configure and tweak your models. There are also some advanced options here. I'll not go into that, but there's information about how often it's going to be retuned, and if you're going to show the same product multiple times, etc., etc. So this is where you will be able to define your models. And models are, again, just AI or algorithms that will, display products for you based on your configuration. What you also then have, the last part, is the placements. And this is basically configurations where you link a placement, for example, right hand on the product side, in the basket or front page, or on the order confirmation page, for example, to do upselling. And I think I have it open here. Yeah. So this is also giving you the possibility to debug, where you have here a placement ID, which is recently viewed default. This, I think, is a placement that Håkon has added in the front end. And what I do here is I'm adding the visitor ID, which is, I just fetched it from my current session. This is the visitor ID that I know I'm using. I think we're logging it in the console also, Håkon, in the current implementation.
Yep, that's true, yeah. For every event, we're logging that out, so you can grab it.
And this means that you could actually debug the recommendations for all the models, for all the placements, based on a visitor ID. So this is kind of how you can verify that, okay, this actually works. It gives me the recently viewed recommendations, and there's even two modes. It's a list view, and you see that you get the information from the service on the SKU, thumbnail, etc., etc. But maybe you can show how to take a placement, which I think that is basically the placement ID that you're interested in. And you can create, again, many placements here. And each placement is linked to an algorithm. So this kind of, you have to select the model. And since we're not trained, we only have the items recently viewed. And then you can create a name like basket and call this basket. And then you have a placement which is configured with the model you want, and you can then use it in the front end. And Håkon can show how that works. I'll just close my desktop.
All right, there's going to be another screen share. Get a proper screen share fast. There we go. This is basically the tracking we saw previously. Before I move on, I just wanted to mention that the tracking part, as well as the recommendations part later, is with this example here, is lazy loaded in. It doesn't really degrade any performance on the page whatsoever. It's basically progressively enhancing it afterwards. So it's important to mention.
Yep.
So the next part is the actual showing the recommendations. So on the product page, we have an effect here called get recommendations, or others viewed products. Recently viewed might be better. In any case, we've written a small serverless function to get us the recommendations. You can't do this completely in the front end, at least not with the current setup of the API. So what you need to do is to create a serverless function or something in the backend that helps you get that out. I'll show you how it looks. API recommendations, which takes in a SKU. So this is what it's currently doing. It's calling the recommendation engine, giving the project number, and it's a very long URL. And there's an API key at the end. This might change, so don't assume that this will work in later times. We're then telling it, please get us the detail. Oh wait, no, the detail page view. Is that right?
I just have a question on the. So Christopher asks if you have to manually import, like we showed, the upload file, and of course there is an API here also. which is also in the documentation, but we just wanted to put it and get it up and running with a one-time import of the product catalog.
Yeah, definitely something you should have on a scheduled job every now and then, ensuring that Google recommendations have all your products with a recent price. You can also have the price and the cost for items in there as well, which is just make sure that it's properly tuned. But yeah, this is definitely a scheduled job. Anyways, we're passing in our visitor ID here, which I passed in from the browser, and I'm telling it which SKU I'm currently viewing. And then I'm just returning that response back to the browser. So when I call this, we're getting the products back. These are the actual recommended or last viewed products produced by the AI engine. So for each of them, I just want to normalize the data a little bit before I just set this in the client state so we can show it. That's pretty much it. Essentially, it's going to be injected at the bottom here. The related products is not this. This is something that you can set it in Crystallize for this particular shape, but this one as the Google recommendations here with the items getting passed in.
And for all of the placements, you're getting the same format back. So once you've made one placement, if I'm not wrong, Håkon, you can just change the model on the Google Recommendations AI backend, and then you get different algorithms so that you can experiment, and you could even do different testing here.
Exactly, and you can also fine tune the display of this. Essentially, you are in total control of what you want to display or how you want to display it. Right now, we're just once it's ready, we just show it like boom. It's there, but you could, of course, make a beautiful transition into, getting the products in there nice and beautiful. But most people will just, show them.
Like and of course, we are using now a Jamstack or edge side generation strategy for the web shop. So all products are living on the edge with the globally distributed CDN. So it's super fast, and then we're just injecting the recommendations via JavaScript.
Yep, that's true. Yeah, so it's still fast. It's still static. It's still going to give you those sweet lighthouse scores, but you're getting all the powers of this dynamic recommendations engine.
True. So it's, I would say, a situation of the best of both worlds. So we're doing the tracking asynchronously with the JavaScript. Doesn't affect the page speed. We're also then injecting after the fact here we are, the recommendations on the web shop. And in this case, it's the simplest algorithm that we show here, but the principle is the same. So just give the site a little bit more traffic, configure another model, and you're up and running with personalization on a Jamstack eCommerce front end. So it's
nice.
That's buzzword compliant for you. Google even had AI in the name. So
very much so. I mean, and despite the hurdle that we had to get past in order to get the import working, I think all in all, it's quite an easy, smooth integration. And I'm eager to see the next iteration that they make, if it's going to be even smoother. I hope so.
Definitely, but in any case, it's interesting, and it's a simple example of how you can really insert some personalization in a Jamstack style web shop. So you can still be fast, and you can add personalization and even AI in this. I'm not sure if there's actually any AI, but anyhow, it's part of the name. So I think that's what we wanted to show now. So it's in recap, it's injecting the products, tracking the events, placing or training the AI, and then placing the recommendations on your site. And that's the steps you need in order to go live with this.
Yep. Exactly.
So with that, we'll see you in the next one.
Yep. Yeah.